Walgreens isn't just closing stores. It's abandoning a role it once played as a cornerstone of everyday American life. What used to be a reliable stop for medicine, groceries, and late-night necessities is now becoming increasingly scarce, especially in rural and working-class neighborhoods. These closures aren't isolated incidents. They're signs of a larger breakdown in how communities access basic services.
Don't get fooled by the label. Subscribe now to uncover what's really behind your favorite brands. And get the truth Big Food doesn't want you to see.
Cracker Barrel, Red Lobster, and even Macy's are quietly disappearing from towns and cities where they once symbolized routine, connection, and even celebration. It's not just the buildings going dark. It's the fading of places that once helped hold everyday life together. Behind the headlines of retail collapse lies something deeper, a shift in the American way of life. The decline of once iconic stores is a result of rising costs, changing habits, and a digital economy that prioritizes speed over presence. These closures reflect more than corporate missteps. They reveal society recalibrating under pressure. From inflation to digital disruption, the forces at play are stripping away long-standing rituals of consumption and connection. What's left is a culture confronting the loss of familiar spaces, reshaping its identity in the process. It's 2025, and the retail world that once defined American life is unraveling before our eyes. The storefronts that once anchored our neighborhoods, shaped our routines, and built our communities are vanishing, and it's not just nostalgia that's dying. This is a direct result of economic stress, inflation, corporate stagnation, and a seismic shift in how Americans live, work, and spend. Retail chains that once stood tall as emblems of prosperity are now gutted, hollowed out, or shuttered completely. This isn't random. It's a systemic collapse driven by years of rising operational costs, stagnant wages, and the brutal efficiency of e-commerce. The age of shopping malls, strip plazas, and drugstore chains is fading. Not because people stopped shopping, but because the economics of in-person retail have stopped making sense. Walgreens, for example, used to be more than just a pharmacy. It was a community fixture, a place to grab your prescriptions, pick up a birthday card, or run a late-night errand. But now, Walgreens is hemorrhaging locations across the country. The business model just isn't working anymore. Storefront crime has surged. Labor costs have ballooned. And digital competitors are offering faster, cheaper, and more convenient service. What's left are boarded-up stores, lost jobs, and fewer healthcare access points, especially in the very neighborhoods that relied on them most. But Walgreens is just one domino in a broader collapse. Macy's, once the crown jewel of American department stores, is also closing locations in droves. The magic of the holiday windows, the thrill of in-store sales, the whole family outing experience, it's gone. Inflation has squeezed family budgets so tightly that discretionary spending is a luxury fewer and fewer can afford. Consumers aren't browsing beauty counters or trying on winter coats anymore. They're hunting for discount codes and delivery options. It's convenience over experience. Survival over sentimentality. Even the craft and hobby spaces aren't safe. Jo-Ann Fabrics, long a haven for crafters, quilters, and DIYers, is shutting down stores. Creative hobbies are being edged out by economic pressure. People aren't making art. They're working second jobs. Leisure time has been replaced by hustle. What used to be an emotionally fulfilling pastime has become an unaffordable luxury. Then there's Red Lobster. The endless shrimp may be over, and it's not funny, it's tragic. Dining out is becoming rare. Chains like Red Lobster and Cracker Barrel were once go-to spots for birthday dinners, post-church brunches, or family night out. Now, shrinking menus, understaffed kitchens, and declining foot traffic. With grocery prices still rising and wages largely stagnant, families are staying home, skipping the appetizer, and scraping together meals instead. Best Buy is also on the chopping block. Once the go-to destination for everything from laptops to washing machines, it's now facing irrelevance. Why walk into a store when you can get the same item delivered the next day, and cheaper, by clicking a button? Amazon, Temu, and other e-commerce behemoths have crushed the old-school retail experience. They know what you want before you do, deliver it faster, and skip the overhead entirely. Brick and mortar just can't keep up. Express, the clothing brand that once embodied mall fashion cool, is fading out too. As dress codes disappear and office culture dissolves, demand for trendy workwear is down. People aren't buying clothes for status or style. They're buying them to last. Online fast fashion and resale platforms dominate now. Loyalty to brands like Express just isn't what it used to be. This transformation isn't just economic, it's cultural. Retail was once a cornerstone of American identity. Shopping wasn't just a transaction, it was a social act. A stroll through the mall with friends. A Saturday afternoon at the food court. Picking out school clothes with your parents. These were shared rituals. Moments of joy, community, and connection. The decline of stores like Macy's, Joann, and Red Lobster isn't just about profit margins. It's about the slow erosion of shared cultural memory. And it's not just about consumer preferences shifting. It's about consumer capacity shrinking. Inflation, housing costs, and healthcare bills have eaten away at disposable income. People are spending less not because they want to, but because they have to. Rising rent, gas, childcare, and grocery prices are suffocating the middle class. That leaves little room for leisurely shopping sprees or spontaneous dinners out. The retail sector is crumbling under the weight of this economic stress. This pressure is especially brutal for low-income and rural communities. When Walgreens shuts down in a small town, that's not just a pharmacy closing. It's the loss of one of the few healthcare access points. When Red Lobster shutters in a mid-sized city, it's not just a restaurant. It's dozens of jobs gone. These closures deepen the divide between urban centers and forgotten regions. Essential services are consolidating in wealthier areas, while everyone else is left behind. Online platforms are winning not just because they're faster or cheaper, but because traditional retailers fail to evolve. Many of these brands clung to outdated strategies and resisted innovation. They failed to adapt to digital-first habits. They relied on nostalgia, while their competitors built data-driven ecosystems. The price of stagnation? Obsolescence. But this isn't just a market correction. It's a structural reckoning. Traditional retail was built on a 20th century foundation. Cheap labor, steady growth, loyal consumers, and endless expansion. That model doesn't hold in 2025. Now, businesses face brutal rent hikes, high insurance premiums, supply chain volatility, and employee shortages. Meanwhile, consumer trust is declining. People aren't loyal to brands. They're loyal to savings. That's why store closures aren't a blip. They're a symptom, a signal of a deeper transformation. Retail is no longer about community. It's about logistics. It's about algorithms and automation, not floor staff and greeters. The tactile, social, and communal aspects of shopping are fading. And with them, a piece of what made American life feel familiar. This shift has cultural consequences. When Cracker Barrel goes under, it's more than a business loss. It's a sign that the social glue that held communities together, shared meals, small-town rituals, family outings, is weakening. Retail was where people crossed paths, caught up, and connected. Its decline reflects the loss of that community spirit. We're also seeing a societal pivot from abundance to minimalism. Where previous generations defined the American dream by how much they could buy, today's version might be about how much they can live without. Young people, in particular, are leaning into thrift, sustainability, and simplicity, not because it's trendy, but because it's necessary. Affordability is dictating values. Lifestyle changes are being driven by survival, not preference. And while these trends hit everyone, they don't hit everyone equally. Wealthy shoppers still have access to curated experiences, delivery services, and niche boutiques. But working-class families are watching their communities lose grocery stores, pharmacies, and affordable restaurants. The geography of retail decline mirrors the geography of inequality. This moment forces a bigger question. What happens when structures that shape daily life collapse? What fills the vacuum left behind by shuttered stores and empty lots? Will communities find new ways to connect? Will policymakers step in to preserve access to essential goods and services? Or will we retreat further into individualism, defined by doorstep deliveries and digital interactions? Retail isn't just commerce, it's culture. And its decline signals a shift not just in how we buy, but in how we live. We're witnessing a generational transformation, one that demands strategic response and a rethinking of what prosperity looks like. Businesses that adapt may survive. Those that don't will vanish into memory, just like the mall kiosks and neon signs of decades past. This isn't the end of retail. It's the end of retail as we knew it. What rises in its place will depend on whether we address the underlying economic, social, and technological forces reshaping the landscape. It will depend on whether we choose innovation over nostalgia and inclusion over consolidation. If this story resonates with you, if you've seen these changes in your own community, or if you care about where we're heading as a society, then help us keep this conversation going. Like the video, share it with friends, and drop a comment below about the stores you've seen vanish from your town. And don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth looks at the real transformations shaping America. The downfall of America's most iconic retail chains isn't just about economics. It's about identity. For decades, these businesses weren't just where we shopped. They were where we grew up, where we bonded, where we built memories. Take Sears. Yes, it's not on the current list, but it was one of the first giants to fall, and its decline marked the beginning of a trend no one wanted to admit was real. Sears was once the backbone of American retail, offering everything from tools to toasters under one roof. It promised possibility, stability, a piece of the American dream. Now, that dream is on clearance. Fast forward to 2025, and we're watching the same fate consume other staples. Rite Aid is dissolving before our eyes. Financial instability, poor management decisions, and increased competition have driven one of the country's largest drugstore chains into chaos. Consumers in working-class neighborhoods are seeing closing sale signs not just as a marketing tactic, but as a warning of what's to come. One less store. One more reason to drive miles for a prescription refill. One more crack in the foundation of local infrastructure. Meanwhile, Bed Bath & Beyond, a store that once felt like a domestic wonderland, is now little more than a memory. Once known for its endless aisles of towels, home gadgets, and wedding registries, it became too bloated, too expensive, and too slow to adapt. Online retailers undercut it. Consumer interest dried up. Now, the white and blue coupons are irrelevant relics of a past where retail felt indulgent and fun. But let's go deeper. This isn't just about closures. It's about a shift in how Americans see themselves. We used to define prosperity through things. What we could buy, own, display. The mall was a social arena, a status symbol, and a ritual all at once. But those rituals are dying. What used to be a Saturday trip to browse Macy's is now a 10-minute scroll through an app. The tactile is being replaced by the digital. Physical space is being sacrificed for data points and shipping centers. And with that shift, there's a quiet but unmistakable loss. A loss of human interaction. A loss of casual conversation. A loss of routine. Look at the food sector. Cracker Barrel, a chain once wrapped in nostalgia and Southern charm, is disappearing from highways and small towns. It represented more than food. It was comfort. It was familiarity. It was where families stopped on road trips, where grandparents treated their grandkids to pancakes and checkers on the porch. Now it's slipping away. Fewer diners, rising food costs, and changing social habits are pushing these places toward irrelevance. Even Outback Steakhouse and Olive Garden are under pressure. Americans aren't sitting down for drawn-out dinners anymore. They're microwaving, meal prepping, or skipping meals entirely because groceries have jumped 20% in some areas since 2022. These dining institutions can't survive when their regulars can barely afford gas, let alone a $50 meal. And let's not pretend this is just a business cycle correction. It's a long-term transformation. It's about more than what's closing. It's about what's not coming back. You won't see new malls replacing the dead ones. You won't see a new chain of local pharmacies filling in for Rite Aid or Walgreens. You won't see family-friendly mid-tier restaurants booming with activity. What's taking their place? Ghost kitchens, delivery hubs, discount warehouses, fulfillment centers with no customer entrance and no cashier in sight. And when you take the human element out of retail, you take the culture out too. Retail isn't dying because people stop spending. Retail is dying because the model stopped working for the economy we actually live in. Workers are overextended. Consumers are underpaid. Businesses are overleveraged. And the digital economy has trained people to expect everything, everywhere, all at once, for less. That expectation is cutting the legs out from under businesses that were built to be places. Places you visit, browse, touch, experience. Now, if you can't deliver in 24 hours with free shipping and no hassle returns, you're irrelevant. But let's talk about malls. Because if there's one symbol of America's retail collapse, it's the dying mall. In the 1990s and early 2000s, malls were temples of adolescence and family life. Now they're empty shells. You walk past vacant anchor stores, echoing food courts and decaying fountains. It's not just eerie, it's symbolic. These weren't just places to shop. They were where kids got their first job, where teens had their first date, where parents walked their toddlers in the winter. Their decay is physical proof that a way of life is disappearing. And the impact on employment is enormous. Every store that shutters means dozens, sometimes hundreds, of people without work. Retail has long been a lifeline for young workers, part-time employees, and parents looking for flexible schedules. These weren't glamorous jobs, but they were jobs. And in communities already struggling, losing a Walgreens or a Best Buy isn't just a loss of shopping convenience. It's a loss of economic oxygen. We're watching a redistribution of retail wealth, too. The big players that can absorb losses, Amazon, Walmart, Costco, are consolidating power. And while their convenience is undeniable, the concentration of commerce into fewer and fewer hands raises real concerns about labor standards, consumer choice, and long-term resilience. Small towns, in particular, are being gutted. When a Walgreens or a Red Lobster leaves a rural community, nothing replaces it. The void just grows. And it tells residents, consciously or not, that their community isn't worth investing in, that their town doesn't matter. That's not just economic damage. It's psychological warfare. And still, we're told this is just how it works. That businesses rise and fall. That innovation means displacement. That disruption is a sign of progress. But progress for whom? For the family that now drives 40 miles to fill a prescription? For the single mom who used to work weekends at the department store and now juggles 2 part-time gigs with no benefits? For the elderly couple who no longer have a place to grab lunch on Sundays? This isn't creative destruction. It's selective destruction. And what's rising in its place is not inherently better, just leaner, faster, colder. Now, to be clear, not every closure is a tragedy. Some brands fail because they refuse to evolve. Some because of bloated management and outdated strategies. Some because they expanded too fast and couldn't course correct. But when 15 major chains are declining in the same time frame, that's not a coincidence. That's a signal. It's a signal that our economy is out of balance, that the cost of doing business has outpaced the profit of serving communities, that the pressures on working Americans are too great to sustain discretionary consumption. That convenience has trumped connection, and we're only starting to feel the cultural consequences. So where do we go from here? This can't just be about blaming Amazon or inflation. The conversation has to include policy, planning, and priorities. Cities and towns need to rethink zoning and community development. Policymakers need to consider how to support local business ecosystems instead of subsidizing massive logistics operations. And consumers, us, we need to think about the kind of economy we want to participate in. Because retail is personal. It reflects who we are and how we live. Do we want a future of faceless transactions, empty storefronts, and one-click satisfaction? Or do we fight for a more grounded, connected, and equitable commercial culture? The answer isn't simple, but the urgency is real. 15 major retail chains aren't just failing. They're being failed by a system that no longer supports long-term community investment. The result? A retail landscape that's less human, less local, and less inclusive. But it doesn't have to be this way. With innovation, public support, and smarter business models, some chains can reinvent themselves. Some already are, but the window is closing. And as these chains vanish, the silence they leave behind is louder than any grand opening ever was. It's the silence of darkened parking lots, of store closing signs that stay up long after the doors have locked, of towns that used to thrive, now slowly hollowing out. What's left in these spaces? Sometimes it's a Spirit Halloween store that pops up once a year, like a ghost of commerce past. Sometimes it's nothing, just boarded up windows and graffiti. But most often it's loss. Loss of jobs, loss of foot traffic, loss of meaning. Because for all the criticism these chains deserve, and many deserve plenty, they still provided anchors for people's daily lives. Walgreens might not have been glamorous, but it was a place where someone knew your name when you picked up your prescription. Red Lobster wasn't fine dining, but it was where generations celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. Joanne wasn't just fabric. It was where creativity took shape, where mothers taught daughters how to sew, where the holidays began. Now those moments are disappearing. And the replacements? They're impersonal, faceless, algorithm-driven, and cold. We are in the middle of a deep cultural shift, one that asks us to trade community for convenience, to prioritize speed over presence, to accept the erosion of shared public life as inevitable. And maybe some of this change is inevitable. Maybe progress means that not every business survives. But when entire categories of retail begin to crumble, when pharmacies, restaurants, department stores, and craft outlets all start collapsing at once, it's time to stop calling it a coincidence. It's time to start calling it what it is. A transformation, one that's happening without a safety net, without a plan, without any serious effort to ask what we're losing and what we'll have left when it's gone. Retail at its best used to be about more than consumption. It was about interaction, community, aspiration, identity. And while online shopping can offer speed and affordability, it can't offer connection. It can't recreate the feeling of bumping into a neighbor at the checkout line, of chatting with a cashier who's worked there for 20 years, of watching your kid light up in the toy aisle. Those moments mattered. And if we let them vanish without a fight, we'll lose more than just stores. We'll lose pieces of our culture, quietly, irreversibly. So the next time you drive past a shuttered Walgreens, or notice your favorite family restaurant replaced by a delivery-only ghost kitchen, take a moment, not just to mourn what's gone, but to ask why it's gone, and what kind of future we're allowing to take its place. If you care about the direction this country is heading, if you're watching your town change and wondering what can be done, then make your voice heard, like this video. Share it, comment below with your experience, and subscribe because this is far from over. We're not just telling the story of retail, we're telling the story of who we're becoming.